Okay, I would like to call the meeting to order at 9 a.m. I ask that as a courtesy to all, thank you, as a courtesy to all to ensure that you have silenced your cell phones. So I also ask to remind all the directors to turn their microphones on and off each time they speak to help with the audio and video recordings. For the record, I'll note that the public meeting notice was properly posted as required by law, and the notice of the board meeting was provided to all of the directors. Notification was received from all directors, and Director Bell stated that he would not be present for the meeting. We've reached the portion of the meeting that we've set aside to hear from you, the general public. Those interested in providing comments by filling out one of the cards available at the reception desk will be called to approach the podium to make their comment at this time. Seeing that no one wishes to speak, we'll move forward on to the agenda. Agenda item number 1, report and possible discussion on General Manager CEO report by David Collingsworth, General Manager and CEO.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm glad everyone's here today. All the folks that aren't on the board or aren't on the staff, I appreciate you all being here today. As I introduced you last time, can you still hear me? I'm not a person that usually needs a mic. A lot of our meetings, we start off with a safety moment. So if in your car last week you didn't get the low tire pressure because of the cold weather, you will probably get it this Thursday morning. So do yourself a favor and make sure that you have the proper air pressure in your tires. So as you're driving around the wet Texas roads, you're as safe as you can possibly be. We think through that because at the BRA we have a lot of folks that spend a lot of time on the road. So the next few minutes I'm going to talk about a few things, and really the theme is change. We've talked about the authority changing because we have huge projects that are coming that are going to force us to change. We have dynamics in Texas that are going to force us to change. So change is really my theme this morning. And with change, we found out late last week that we're going to have some board members that are going to be stepping off the board, they're going to be replaced. And that is change that was inevitable, but change we'll have to deal with. But Peter Bennis, Dave Scott, Leroy Bell, Sal Zaccanino, Richard Ball, those are 5 that we're losing. On behalf of the staff, thank you. Thank you for all the times you answered the phone, all the meetings you showed up at, all the mentorship, all the leadership. Really learned a lot from you guys. You helped deliver SysOps. Your fingerprints are on the BRA, and we're forever thankful for your time. So thank you very much. We also learned that instead of filling interim roles, we'll have 2 gentlemen for the next 6 years. Wes Lloyd, congratulations. Jim Lattimore, congratulations on what will be your reappointment on the board. So we're excited to have you for 6 years. Also, change in the aspect of staff happens from time to time, and I want to introduce you to a few folks that are new to our staff and a promotion that we've been able to have here at the BRA. First of all, in our Office of Security and Safety, we were able to land an employee that we've been looking at for quite some time that brings a tremendous amount of experience to the BRA, all the way from early on in his career as a state trooper here in Central Texas to later on in his career working for the Department of State and providing security for U.S. embassies overseas. Robert Starnes, where are you, Robert? Robert just left. Hopefully his pager didn't go off. So Robert's a fresh set of eyes that's going to do an outstanding job at looking at our physical security, our cyber security, and we're real excited to have Robert. Also, Mr. Mike Green, did Mike leave with him? Yeah, good. Mike is our new engineering services manager, a position that we created and have been trying to fill. Mike's a 35-year engineer with Texas Power Generation before he came to BRA. He's just, being in that world, he's just had his fingers on so many different things that was engineering, and just in a week and a half, 2 weeks he's been here, we've seen some great things out of him. So Mike, we're real pleased that you're here. Having come up through the BRA and understanding the significance of being promoted into different positions, it was just a super honor for me to visit with our executive management team about Blake Kettler. And when we had the tech services manager job come open, it was unanimous with the executive committee that Blake was our guy. Blake's been with the BRA for quite a while. Before the BRA, he was with project delivery with U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, so he understands dams, the maintenance, the projects that he's delivered at Possum Kingdom have just been excellent. He's a great manager, and we really are excited about his career developing as our tech services manager. So Blake, congratulations. Last but not least, again, talking about change, I visited with you about how Allen's Creek is going to change our organization. We're also evaluating how this organization grows in response to the need of our customers. And the best way to do that is to have our customers here. So we're going to start a series of customer workshops. In December, Gulf Coast Water Authority is going to come spend a day with our executive managers and really get down into the nuts and bolts of how they do their business, more importantly, how they see their challenges coming in the future, so that as we adapt and grow, we can do it around what their needs are. So December is going to be Gulf Coast Water Authority. Round Rock has agreed to come in January. So our staff are really excited about those opportunities and look forward to that learning opportunity. Madam Chairman, I'll turn the program over to you and let's get busy.
Awesome. Thank you, David. Agenda item number 2, discussion and possible action on amendments to the personnel policies by Monica Willis, Human Resource Manager.
Good morning. Each year we review the personnel policies to see if there are any changes we need to make, changing environment, laws, etc. A redline copy of the complete policies that we are looking to revise was included in the diligent materials, but I'll run through them briefly right now. I think I will. First one is policy 2.05, tobacco use policy. We are proposing to add e-cigarettes to the list of prohibited tobacco products, restricting use on BRA facilities, property, and in BRA-owned vehicles. Policy 2.19, restriction on employment. This is a change to the law which restricted any employee or officer who participated in a purchase or contract negotiation from accepting employment with said person or business entity for a period of 2 years following their employment. The change is the restriction now prohibits employment for a period of 2 years from the date the contract is signed or the procurement is terminated or withdrawn. So that helps a little bit. Policy 3.05, age requirements. We're deleting the restriction that a person must be at least 18 years old to work in a full-time position for the Brazos River Authority. And although it's unlikely we'll have someone who's under the age of 18 working for us, there isn't really a reason we shouldn't. We just need to make sure they're not working in a hazardous occupation. Policy 5.13, call-out compensation. The BRA currently provides a stipend for hours worked by employees who are called out after hours or on weekends. The change would double the stipend from $3.75 per hour to $7.50 per hour when responding to calls on BRA holidays. Policy 5.15, diver compensation. We're adding language to clarify that employees must meet the requirements that are in the certified diver procedure to be eligible for diver compensation. So that provides the procedure will provide a lot more detail of what employees, the criteria they must meet before they're eligible for diving, one, and then a diving stipend. And then the next 3 policies, we're just cleaning up some outdated language. Policy 14.01, general. We're updating the personal information that an employee may elect to be withheld when requested under the Texas Public Information Act. There are some additional items that can be withheld, so we're just updating the policy to reflect that. Policy 14.02, personnel action form. We're deleting the requirement to retain personnel action forms permanently, as we are only required to retain a summary of the information listed on the personnel action forms, not the actual forms. And during the course of employment, anything that happens in an employee's life gets a personnel action form. So there's a bunch of them. So we just maintain a summary and we scan that in for a permanent record. In policy 14.03, contents of personnel files, we added public access option forms to the list of documents that are not retained in active employees' personnel files. We keep these forms in a separate notebook, so if we do get a Public Information Act for personal information, we can easily go through and see who's requested their information not be released. And then upon termination, those are worked into their personnel files. Are there any questions on any of the policy? And I'll read the resolution, and that is not the resolution I'm reading. All right. Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby approves the revisions to the Human Resources Policy Manual as presented at its October 28, 2019 meeting to be effective November 1, 2019.
You've heard the reading of the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt? So moved by Rick Hubert, second by
Dave Scott.
Dave Scott. Please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Flores,
Yes.
Director Bell,
Yes.
Director Zapanino,
Yes.
Director Bennett,
Yes.
Director Henderson,
Yes.
Director Hubert,
Yes.
Director Crum,
Yes.
Director LaChance,
Yes.
Director Lattimore,
Yes.
Director Leslie,
Yes.
Director Lloyd,
Yes.
Director Luton,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Sanderson,
Yes.
Director Scott,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Tallis,
Yes.
Director Taylor,
Yes.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
Agenda item 3, discussion and possible action, medical insurance by Monica.
This is an action item to request authorization for the general manager to execute all documents necessary to continue our health plan with Blue Cross Blue Shield. This year, our insurance broker, Hub International, solicited for proposals for a medical plan. We received 2 viable responses, one from Blue Cross Blue Shield and the other from United Healthcare. United proposed an 8.8% decrease in the first year, but would not provide a protection against rate increase next year, regardless our claims history for 2020. Hub advised that their experience with United Healthcare has been that they will quote low to buy the business and recoup the loss in subsequent years with double-digit increases. We've had fairly good claims experience over the past 4 years with Blue Cross Blue Shield, so Hub was able to secure a rate pass with them for 2020. Blue Cross Blue Shield has only increased their premiums a total of 3.4% in the last 4 years, which, as you know, is incredible. We have had a good claims history with them, which offers some protection should we have any catastrophic claims in the next year. For these reasons, Hub recommends and management agrees that it would be in the best interest of the BRA to continue our relationship with Blue Cross Blue Shield for the 2020 plan year. Are there any questions regarding that? If not, I'll read the resolution.
Thank you.
Whereas the Brazos River Authority has maintained a relationship with Hub International, Hub in parentheses, since 2015 to provide benefit consulting services. Whereas the Brazos River Authority has maintained a fully insured medical plan with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas since January 1, 2016. Whereas HUB determined it to be prudent to explore medical benefit provider options for the FY 2020 plan year to ensure our premiums are competitive and we are providing employees with high-quality, well-managed benefits. Whereas HUB conducted a thorough review of the proposals, ensured the plan benefit designs were comparable, and negotiated best and final offers with each company. Whereas Blue Cross Blue Shield agreed to premium rate freeze for the 2020 plan year with no disruption for participants, HUB recommends the Brazos River Authority continue our medical plan with Blue Cross Blue Shield. And whereas the estimated employer cost of medical premiums for the 2020 plan year will not exceed $3 million, and the funds budgeted for medical premiums in FY 2020 are adequate to pay the medical premiums as quoted by Blue Cross Blue Shield. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, to enter into all agreements necessary to continue the relationship with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas, to provide the Brazos River Authority a fully insured medical plan at the rates quoted for the 2020 plan year and within the financial parameters set forth in the FY 2020 budget.
You've heard the reading of the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt? Motion made by Jeff Tallis.
John
and second by John Henry Luby. Please call the board.
Presiding Officer Flores,
Yes.
Director Bell,
Yes.
Director Zacanino,
Yes.
Director Bennis,
Yes.
Director Henderson,
Yes.
Director Huber,
Yes.
Director Crum,
Yes.
Director LaChance,
Yes.
Director Lattimore,
Yes.
Director Leslie,
Yes.
Director Lloyd,
Yes.
Director Luton,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Sanderson,
Yes.
Director Scott,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Tallis,
Yes.
Director Taylor,
Yes.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
Item number
4, discussion and possible action on determination.
interruptible water available for 2020 by Aaron Abel, Water Services Manager. Good morning.
Morning, Madam Chair, Directors. This is an item that we bring to the board every October to determine the interruptible water available for the next calendar year, for the upcoming calendar year. So interruptible water is just that. It's interruptible. It's not guaranteed. The availability of the water is not guaranteed. Interruptible water, the definition of that, of interruptible water, is unused firm water left over in reservoir storage from the previous year. The availability varies from year to year depending on weather and water usage. And as I mentioned, it's established, the availability is established by the board each October for the upcoming calendar year. We've been supplying interruptible water since 2008, and it's typically purchased from customers that want insurance or backup. They typically have water rights that satisfy their demands most of the years, but they purchase interruptible water for insurance purposes. We have a procedure that outlines all the pertinent details regarding interruptible water. The annual calculation methodology includes a safety factor that's established by the board as well. And the purpose of the safety factor is to ensure that interruptible water sales don't impact long-term contracts. So that's the reason for the safety factor. It also provides for a 75% margin of safety used every year since the inception of interruptible water in 2008. We have multi-year contracts that are still in place. We haven't been, I guess in 2018, we stopped issuing multi-year contracts for interruptible water, but those contracts will expire in the next 2 years, next year and then finally in 2021. So those multi-year contracts, they get the first shot of the availability of interruptible water for 2020. We do have, in the contracts, in the interruptible contracts, we have a provision that says that we can suspend interruptible water use if any one of our reservoirs or the system reaches a stage 3 drought emergency condition under the Brazos River Authority Drought Contingency Plan. The procedure also outlines priority of the requests for 1,000 acre-feet or less when allocating the available water. That's not going to be an issue this year, as we'll see here in a couple slides. This is a graphic that summarizes the amount of interruptible water that has been offered, contracted for, and used since 2008, from 2008 to 2019. The blue bars in each of the years indicates the interruptible water that was authorized by the board each year. And then the brown bars are the amounts that were actually contracted for. And then finally, the green bars for each year is the actual amount of water used under interruptible contracts. One of the things to kind of draw from this is the 2011 year was a game changer in that ever since 2011, most years, all of the interruptible made available is fully contracted for. You will see that they're not all years are used, mainly because of the backup portion, insurance purposes, where our downstream customers, Dow and Gulf Coast, they use interruptible water only in maybe 2 to 3 years out of 10, so in those drier years. This is a slide that summarizes who our interruptible water customers are this year and shows a little more detail on which contracts expire and which ones will carry over into the next year. This year in 2019, we have a total of 77,203 acre-feet that's under contract for this year. About 58% of that contracted amount is with Dow Chemical and Gulf Coast Water Authority. There's 64 contracts that make up about 31% of the 77,000, and then the remaining 11% was multi-year contracts that returned their contracts or would have been extended beyond 2019. So when we went out and we have these new long-term contracts under the system operation permit, and those mostly have been executed. Some of those customers decided that they didn't need any more interruptible water, or they reduced their amounts of interruptible water under their multi-year contracts. So that's what that returned amount is. I think this is getting down to the last slide or so. This slide shows the numbers that result from our calculations as defined in the procedure. The calculated 2020 interruptible amount is in the second column here. The amounts vary by location, so we break down the numbers by the different subsystems of our system. And in total, the 2020 interruptible water calculation indicates 80,755 acre-feet, and that's what our recommendation to you today is. The middle column shows the amount of interruptible water that is under contract in multi-year contracts, and those are the contracts that I mentioned before. And these customers have priority of the water available, and as I mentioned, they'll expire in the next couple of years. So we'll have more and more available as those run out. The last column shows the remainder of the calculated 2020 interruptible water minus the existing contracts that extend through 2020. This amount of water will be offered to new requests received in this year's application process, and we went through an application process this summer. The total amount of requests this year was a little over 18,000 acre-feet, so we're going to be able to supply all of the requests, and that hasn't happened in 8 to 10 years probably, so that's a significant event. We'll have about a little over 1,800 acre-feet left over, and those will be available, that water will be available as a first-come, first-served basis. So I'll entertain any questions that anybody has.
Go ahead and read the resolution.
Okay.
Actually, I've got a question for you.
Sure.
Will you go back to page 4 of your slides? Right there in 2011, it looks like we offered, we sold, and then our customers pretty much used what we sold them. What's different between 2011 and 2019 that they wouldn't use all of what we're selling them?
The drought.
The drought?
Yeah.
Do we anticipate a drought in 2020?
At this time, we don't anticipate, there's no indication with the Climate Prediction Center and NOAA that indicates if we're going to be a drought or that, wet. So at this point, there's really no way. We did some modeling that shows if we do get into a drought, we don't anticipate, it's unlikely we'll have any system of our reservoirs go into stage 3 drought emergency condition.
But that's a great question, because there's a couple of points here. First of all, it is interruptible water. So at any time, should we begin to realize that we are in a drought of significance, we can curtail that water or cut that water availability off.
Did we have to do that in 2011?
I don't remember us doing that in 2011, Brad. Did we curtail interruptible water in 2011?
We did not during the year, but we did not sell for the next year until
Yeah.
later in the spring of 2012.
Oh, so that's why it kind of went,
Yep.
what we could offer went down and then came back up.
Yeah, in 2014, we only supplied the multi-years that were at the time in 2014. That's one of the reasons why there was a big dip in 2014 as well.
Okay, thank you.
Director?
I realize our biggest customers are close to the mouth of the river, but does the location of a customer have anything to do with that? Because obviously, like Somerville on there's got a lot of water from time to time, but it can only affect from the yay wall on down. So how does location of the customer impact that?
Impact availability?
Well, the further up they are, the less options you have to get them water.
Right.
And not only that, depending on where you are on the tributaries may impact your ability to get any water. So if you're immediately downstream in the tributary of Lake Aquila or Lake Granger, you may not have any, or between Georgetown and Lake Granger, you may not have any options at all.
Yeah.
So that's a very good point.
Yep.
When did the 25% safety factor start figuring into the calculation?
We've used the 25 or the 75% margin of safety or the 0.25 safety factor since 2008, since the inception of interruptible water as it is today. And yeah.
Thank you, Aaron. Can you read the resolution, please?
Sure, thanks. Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby approves a safety factor of 0.25 for use in determining the amounts of interruptible water to make available in calendar year 2020. Be it further resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, to make up to 80,755 acre-feet of interruptible water available in calendar year 2020.
You've heard the reading of the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
No second.
Jen.
John Henry Luton made the first motion. Jen Henderson made the second. Please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Flores,
Yes.
Director Bell,
Yes.
Director Zacanino,
Yes.
Director Bennis,
Yes.
Director Henderson,
Yes.
Director Huber,
Yes.
Director Crum,
Yes.
Director LaChance,
Yes.
Director Lattimore,
Yes.
Director Leslie,
Yes.
Director Lloyd,
Yes.
Director Luton,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Sanderson,
Yes.
Director Scott,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Tallis,
Yes.
Director Taylor,
Yes.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
Agenda item number 5, report and possible discussion on candidate conservation agreement with assurances for the Fault Spike and Texas Fawn's Foot in the Brazos River Basin by Tiffany Malzahn, Environmental and Compliance Manager.
Members of the board, I told you in my interview, and you've heard me say before, that the most important asset to the BRA is our people. A year and a half ago, when we started this process, in small groups, there were other entities that were questioning the direction that we were going, and now many of them are following. And it's because of the lady that's at the podium and her knowledge and her expertise that we are very, very close to having a CCAA for the Brazos River Authority. We do not have it. We put this agenda item in because we thought we were going to ask for your approval to enter into that CCAA. We left the information in here for your review and further education because we do anticipate that we will bring it back to you in January as an action item. So there's no presentation today. If you have any questions about where we are or what this is, we can go through that. Otherwise, we can move to the next agenda item.
All right, seeing no questions, agenda item number 6, discussion and possible action on the purchase of contracts for laboratory services to support water and wastewater treatment operations by Tiffany Lawson, Environmental and Compliance Manager. Tiffany?
Hi, yes. We have 3 different laboratory purchase contracts in the works that will support our water and wastewater operations. One was entered into in 2018 to support wastewater operations. February 2019, one was entered into to support industrial pretreatment program services provided to the City of Temple. And finally, we have procurement ongoing for water plant support services to do monitoring for them. What we have learned after a year with the wastewater guys is that as you add new plants and have different changes in the operations of those plants, the structure, the makeup, the technology utilized, is that predicting the exact amount and type of samples you need in any given year has become very challenging. Several different reasons. You have TCQ discharge permit renewals, which sometimes require different analyses. The development stage of the facility, a lot of times TCQ will put in interim targets you have to meet as the facility goes from brand new up to its full capacity. Increasing or changes in the flow quality coming into the plant, which is often affected by the drought and flood cycles, or changes in the receiving streams can all make differences in the number and types of samples, especially with the process samples. If a plant starts having a problem, that number can vary widely. So being able to hit a hard number and a hard predictive factor in a contract over a 5-year period is proven to us to be very difficult. At this point, for this resolution right now, the only one that really hits the mark to be applicable is the wastewater services one, because we have so many facilities on that being served by that contract. But these contracts are usually written for 1 year with 4 optional years of renewal. And the reason that is that helps us achieve the best price for our customers, and it makes it easier to educate our vendors over the uniqueness of each facility, the different treatment technologies utilized, and to get them really well educated on how to run the samples from each facility. Our current BRA operations policy manual requires the board approval on any contract that may expend more than $500,000 under the life of the contract. With the addition of 2 new facilities at Sugar Land, we will definitely, on the wastewater contract, exceed that. So what we're requesting is also, we've learned one of those facilities somewhat problematic, inherited in less than desirable shape, and we're needing to take more samples for the ops staff to have the data they need to get it back functional. So we're requesting a specific grant of authority for the GMCO to execute multi-year contracts for laboratory services to support water and wastewater that are in excess of $500,000 over the life of the contract, as long as our expenditures don't exceed the amount of money budgeted in the annual operating budgets for each facility. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Tiffany, this may not be, I don't know if this is quite pertinent to this or not, but it seemed in my mind that we discussed a year or so ago about building a laboratory here at the home office. Is that right on that, or?
You are. What we talked about was as we grow, needing additional office space, and one of those needs very well may be a laboratory. So if at such point in time, in 2 or 3 years, we had such a laboratory and our wastewater business continued to grow, then we may come back to you and say, okay, in this new facility, we would like to build a laboratory, but we're years away from that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Well, we currently do have a surface water laboratory right now, but that does not run the wastewater samples. As protocols for the laboratories require that those two types of samples be separated to avoid cross-contamination. Okay. There's no more questions? Read the resolution.
All right, go ahead.
Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, to enter into contracts for purchases of laboratory services in amounts exceeding the $500,000 limitation established in Section 2.01 of the Brazos River Authority Operations Policies Manual, to the extent that the contracts and annual expenditures are within the approved annual budgetary expenditures authorized for these items by the Board of Directors.
You've heard the reading of the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt?
I'll make a motion.
All right. Director Crone and
Rick.
Mr. Ford Taylor. Sorry. Please call the board.
Presiding Officer Flores,
Yes.
Director Bell,
Yes.
Director Zaccanino,
Yes.
Director Bennis,
Yes.
Director Henderson,
Yes.
Director Huber,
Yes.
Director Crone,
Yes.
Director LaChance,
Yes.
Director Lattimore,
Yes.
Director Leslie,
Yes.
Director Lloyd,
Yes.
Director Luton,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Sanderson,
Yes.
Director Scott,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Tallis,
Yes.
Director Taylor,
Yes.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
Agenda item 7, discussion and possible action on Upper Leon River Municipal Water District contract by Brad Brunette, Central and Lower Basin Manager.
Good morning, everyone. This is an action item. We're going to be seeking authorization for a contract amendment with the Upper Leon River Municipal Water District. The amendment pertains to the rate that's charged for the water under that contract, and so that's why we're bringing it to you guys for approval. Just a map here that shows the service area of the Upper Leon River Municipal Water District. They're a wholesale treated water provider with a water treatment plant located there at Lake Proctor, where you see the little green triangle. And then they supply wholesale treated water to 5 rural communities, the city of Gorman, DeLeon, Dublin, Comanche, and Hamilton. And I think they also have a little bit of retail service, but for the most part, they're a wholesale provider of treated water to these communities here. We have 3 contracts with the district. There's a 1972 contract for There's a 1972 contract for 3,315 acre-feet of water per year, a 1993 contract for 232 acre-feet per year, and then a 1999 contract for 2,890 acre-feet per year. In total, these add up to about 6,400 acre-feet per year. All of them are priced at the system rate except for 2,742 acre-feet under that 1972 contract. So they're paying system rate for about 57% of their water in total, or 3,695 acre-feet of it. On the 1972 contract, that 2,742 that you see there, they're paying rates ranging anywhere from $8 to $24.50 per acre-foot for that water. Also, I'd point out that you see the note in parentheses beside each contract. We had a new drought of record at Lake Proctor that occurred back from 1998 to 2001. And it reduced the firm yield of the reservoir by about 31.4%. So when that happened, we went back with all of our customers out there and reduced the amount of their contracts by 31.4% as well. And so you'll see the number in parentheses is what the amount of their contracts used to be. And the numbers to the left that I just reviewed are what they are now, and they're only paying for the reduced amounts of the contracts at this point. So up until recently, we were still paying debt service to the Corps of Engineers on original construction cost of Lake Proctor. Due to better market interest rates, we recently paid off that debt service about 4 years early. So in August of this year, we retired the debt with the Corps of Engineers on Lake Proctor. The original amortization schedule had that debt going out to, I think, around September of 2023, so we paid it off about 4 years early. The paragraph that you see here on the screen is a provision from our 1972 contract that talks about renegotiating of the rate to be paid so that it's fair to both parties when we paid off that debt. And so this is an old contract, and obviously arguing about what's fair is kind of in the eye of the beholder. We started a dialogue with the district back in 2017 about our intention that we were planning on retiring this debt, just so that they, had a heads up that it was coming and we could have some time to work with them on the rate negotiation. We've been negotiating with them in earnest over the last 6 months or so on this provision. And, when we think about fair to the BRA, obviously that's system rate. That's what we've been charging all of our new customers since the 1990s, and that's our definition of fair. In working with the district, they've wanted time to transition to the new rate so that, it's not such a big impact on those communities that they serve. And so that's kind of what their definition of fair in their eyes has been. We reached what we think is a good compromise that'll give us a 10-year transition period. It's going to be subject to your approval today, and then the board of the district will also have to approve it at some point. But it accomplishes the goal of getting the water to the BRA system rate on our side while it's sensitive to the rate impacts on the district's customers. The proposal that we've got, we'll start receiving additional revenue under this contract 4 years earlier. So again, we paid the debt off 4 years earlier, and by starting this rate transition now, we'll be receiving additional revenue under this contract that we wouldn't have otherwise. So there's a benefit to BRA there, and then the district will have a few years on the backside to get all the way up to the system rate. Also, there's no way to tell how it would play out, but with the kind of a negotiated agreement here, we avoid any litigation costs down the road of arguing about what's fair. This is a table that just kind of illustrates what the transition would look like. So the district would pay BRA system rate for 10% of that non-system rate water in 2020, and that percentage would increase 10% per year until 2029 when the full system rate would be reached. And so if you look at the table there, the first column of numbers, that's our current system rate and what our projected system rate is out through the next 10 years. So those numbers may look familiar to you from our budget in terms of what the projections are. The second column is what the district is paying for that water in aggregate right now. Again, there's different pots of water, so to speak, that they pay different rates for, but if you aggregate it, they're paying $11.80 right now under that contract. There's a CPI inflator in it that increases slightly, but still, out to 2029, it would only be about $13.50. And the last column is kind of what the proposed transition looks like. So in 2020, they would pay around $18.68 per acre foot. That volume of water would increase by 10% each year that would be charged at system rate until we get out to 2029, whenever we would have them caught up to the system rate. So that's what we have for you. I've got a resolution prepared, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
We have some questions.
Sure.
All right.
Brad, is there not any concern, it seems like we're being very nice here, is kind of what I'm thinking. Is there not any concern that any of our other customers will go, well, hey, you're cutting them a pretty sweetheart deal for 10 years, can you do the same for us?
I don't know that we have any other contracts that have this provision in it, talks about fairness. So most of our contracts are already at system rate. We do have some old contracts that aren't, but I've not seen another contract that has this much grayness in it, so to speak. So I don't think that we'll have that issue. And we've actually had some contracts over the last 5 to 10 years that have already transitioned, and the language in the contracts kind of lays out what's going to happen. And so that's kind of what's unique here, is I think that definition of what's fair.
And Director Tallis, at the beginning of the negotiations, what was fair to us was system rate, and that's what we tried to achieve. And again, I think it boils down to, are we willing to increase our revenues almost immediately or fight it out in court? And I don't think we win. Neither party wins over the definition of fairness, so that was taken into account also.
Thank you.
Just to clarify that the $117.50 per acre foot is an estimate, and what you're projecting is, be it 114, be 122, in 10 years, they'll be paying full system rate for all the water.
Absolutely, yeah. I've got illustration up here because it's not set, it depends on what our rate is, but
I'm
that's
saying it would be the full system rate at 10 years.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I had a little heartburn about this as well, just setting a precedent for, and of course, fair in any contract is a bad term, in my experience. It's just very difficult, and I agree with the idea that litigation is, it's easy to argue over fairness. But would it be a good idea to help us get our mind around this, to identify the materiality of the revenue involved? Because these are very small communities, they don't have a lot of options, resources. And really, after I initially thought about it, I was a little troubled because it does spell out a transition that's quite generous, I should say. But when you look at the communities involved, their use and capacity for resource, it is challenging. And so my question to you, Brad, is isn't this really not that material to our revenue picture? It'd be nice to know the revenue dollars involved, because that's always a good argument in dealing with this, is that. Right. It's because the others are going to say, well, my contract expired, you transitioned, why can't I transition? And this is a matter that we as an organization, if we approve it, will be an argument for them accordingly. So maybe the language is easier to defend on those contracts, but you get my point. So what are the dollars involved?
The dollars involved, if you look at the increased revenue that we're going to receive over the next 4 years by paying the debt off early, is around $300,000 or $400,000 that we wouldn't have received otherwise. So if we wouldn't have paid the debt off, then nothing happens with this contract until the latter part of 2023. So
what would the revenue be if it went to system rate, day one?
David, do you have the calculation in your head?
You gotta realize, I paid off the debt early.
Right.
Because it was at 6-something%.
Right.
So by saying system rate over is $30,000-$40,000 for that period. Technically, I should have waited till 2024 to pay it off. At that time, the system rate would have gone to the full system rate. If you look at the 10 years versus that, it's probably about $250,000 difference
between the two. So it's really not that material.
It's not that material.
Not material. It's this picture.
And you brought up a really good point. This is the only water supply they have. We have cut back their water supply in the past because of the drought. So there's that also.
Okay, thank you.
I've got two questions. And the first one, I think you answered your presentation, but there is a difference, and I just wanted to point that out. What you said, I think, is that 10% of this aggregate would be charged at the system rate, and it would increase every year. Big difference between charging $18.68 for the whole.
Right.
And then and so if that's correct, the other question, I think maybe you've answered, but I just wanted to confirm, this is a one-of-a-kind, peculiar kind of situation. We're not setting a precedent that can be used other places with other customers.
Yes, sir. That's what we think because of that crazy contract provision that talks about fairness. We don't have that in any of our other agreements.
Thank you.
And so, Brad, just for clarification, when 2029 comes, I guess 2030, they are paying the system rate. So they're going to be jumping from $13 and change to $118.
Yes, ma'am.
And our contract will say that, and there won't be any gray.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And again, the system rate in 2029, it may be $140 an acre foot, or it may be $120. We won't know, but whatever that rate is, they'll be paying the full system rate in 2029.
I think it's a very generous agreement for us to do this for them.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's weighted wise. I think it's fair, a lot more fair for them than us because of our overall cost. But it's not material, and we to support them and help them. I think it's equitable.
If there are no other questions,
I kind of echo a little bit what you're saying.
Also across the board, you don't want to get into situations where things are couched or put out to people as kind of a subsidy type scenario, right, or a means test, or whatever the case may be, but it certainly saves some money on one end, and no good deed goes unpunished, right, I understand. But by the same token, there has been some constriction, I guess, due to the drought scenario on those folks as well. So you can kind of say, well, it's not so much of a subsidy, it's kind of an equity deal. Say, well, you've been kind of pulled back here, you're tightened down on that end of the equation, and so maybe coming a little bit lighter on this end allows you to find other sources or other methodologies to help you deal. What I'm trying to say is I don't want to couch this as a subsidy in any manner, shape, or form, because it's not.
It's a business decision.
It's a decision, and we realize that even though, with all the other things going on the drought end of the equation, I think you can justify it based on that. That makes sense? Okay. It is a little generous, I agree with that. But
Any other questions, comments? All right, Brad, if you'll read the resolution, please.
Whereas the 1972 water supply contract has amended between the Brazos River Authority and the Upper Leon River Municipal Water District, district, provides for the district to pay the Brazos River Authority different rates for water, with some water at the Brazos River Authority system rate and some water at rates below the system rate. Whereas the 1972 water supply contract provides for the renegotiation of the rate to be paid by the district so as to be fair to both parties when the Brazos River Authority has paid off the principal and interest specified in its contract with the United States of America for water supply storage in Lake Proctor. And whereas the Brazos River Authority paid off the remaining principal and interest in the United States of America for its water supply storage in Lake Proctor in August 2019. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager/CEO to negotiate and execute an amendment to the 1972 water supply contract, providing for the transition of the non-system rate water to the Brazos River Authority system rate over the course of 10 years.
You've heard the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt? Director Huber, and second by, I'm sorry. Wayne Wilson, sorry. Please call the board.
Presiding Officer Flores,
Yes.
Director Bell,
Yes.
Director Zaganina,
Yes.
Director Bennis,
Yes.
Director Henderson,
Yes.
Director Huber,
Yes.
Director Crum,
Yes.
Director LaChance,
Yes.
Director Lattimore,
yes.
Director Leslie,
Abstain.
Director Lloyd,
Yes.
Director Luton,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Sanderson,
Yes.
Director Scott,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Tallis,
Yes.
Director Taylor,
Yes.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
Moving on to agenda item
Number 8, discussion and possible action on 2025-year engineering inspection, precision control survey, and range line survey of D. Cordova Bend and Sterling C. Robertson Dam by Brad Brunette, Central and Lower Basin Regional Manager.
So this one should be pretty quick. I don't have any slides, but again, it's an action item. We're seeking authorization to contract with Stantec for our 5-year inspections at the Sterling C. Robertson and De Cordova Bend dams. And Sterling C. Robertson is Lake Limestone and De Cordova is Lake Granbury. TCEQ rules require that we perform inspections on a 5-year basis for both, or they require that for both what they define as large and high hazard dams in their rules. And both of these dams fall under both categories of being large and high hazard. So we have to do these inspections every 5 years. The last inspections were conducted in 2015, so we're due again in 2020. We put out a request for proposals earlier this year, and received 2 proposals from that request, and we're recommending a contract with Stantec today to perform this work. We have a couple of representatives with Stantec that are here today. Bill Swanson and Ryan Murdoch are here joining us this morning, so if there are any questions, they would be happy to help with those. The work that they're going to be performing on these type inspections, they're kind of defined in TCEQ rules what's done. There's a lot of pre-inspection data review. There's actual on-site inspections at the dams, records reviews, and then another component of these 5-year services that we've done historically at BRA every 5 years are what we call precision and range line surveys. And the precision survey work is where we have surveyors go out and survey monuments that are established along the dams with high precision techniques to make sure that there's not any movement in the dam. And that's basically one of the ways that's a key part of our dam safety program, to monitor the dams and make sure there's no movement there. And then you may have seen the term range line surveys. Those are actually surveys that are done in the downstream river channel below the dams. We do those same surveys at the same locations every 5 years to monitor for any changes in the downstream river channel, basically to ensure that there's no undercutting of the river channel where it's undermining or eroding back up under the foundation of the dam. The cost for these services, we've got not to exceed fees for work at the De Cordova Bend Dam of $247,300 for the inspection there, and a not to exceed cost of $248,565 at Sterling C. Robertson Dam, and the total for both will be $495,865. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Question here.
Is this the same, did this firm do the surveying, Possum King?
The company, Stantec did not, but the contractor that is on their team that's actually doing the survey work did the surveying at Possum Kingdom.
Is this part of your 2020 budget?
Yes, sir. It's included in the operations budgets.
Any other questions? Yes.
What is it? Brad, can you concisely tell us what it is that qualifies these as high hazard dams? Just cliff notes.
The large, there's a large classification and a high hazard. The large, I believe, has to do with the physical size of the dam, and the high hazard has to do with the consequences in terms of loss of life, that type of thing, if there was a failure.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All right, Brad, you'll read the resolution.
Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager/CEO to execute professional services agreements with Stantec Consulting Services, Inc. to perform the required 5-year engineering inspection, precision control survey, and range line survey of the De Cordova Bend and Sterling C. Robertson dams at costs not to exceed $247,300 and $248,565 respectively, for a combined total cost of $495,865.
You've heard the reading of the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Director Crone and second by Dave Scott. Please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Flores?
Yes.
Director Bell?
Yes.
Director Zacanino?
Yes.
Director Bennis?
Yes.
Director Henderson?
Yes.
Director Huber?
Yes.
Director Crone?
Yes.
Director LaChance?
Yes.
Director Lattimore?
Yes.
Director Leslie?
Yes.
Director Lloyd?
Yes.
Director Luton?
Yes.
Director Rankin?
Yes.
Director Sanderson?
Yes.
Director Scott?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Yes.
Director Tallis? Director Taylor?
Yes.
Director Wilson?
Agenda item number 9, discussion and possible action on Sugar Land wastewater treatment operations contract, letter of contract. Like Brad's can't send more basic.
This is an action item as well. We're seeking authorization to increase the letter of credit amount under our wastewater treatment operations contract with the City of Sugar Land. You may recall that the board authorized our current wastewater treatment agreement with the City of Sugar Land in April of last year, and that contract has a 5-year term under the base portion of the contract with two three-year renewal options. We've been operating wastewater plants in Sugar Land since the 1970s. 10 or 15 years ago, we started with one, then 10 or 15 years ago, we added another, and then last year with this current contract that we're operating under, we added two new facilities, the Greatwood and New Territory facilities that you see there. Those were communities that were annexed by the city, and so as of right now, we're operating these 4 plants for them. Under our contract with the city, there are 5 basic cost components of that contract. There's a base fee, which covers just all of our routine operations and maintenance costs to run the plants. And then we have reimbursable cost components that the city pays us and reimburses us for the cost of all the chemicals, sludge hauling, capital improvements, and repair and replacement items, anything repair and replacement related that we might take on during the course of a year. A letter of credit is required annually under our agreement to secure BRA's performance, and that letter of credit kind of, I guess, works like a performance bond would. So it's basically if BRA were to be grossly negligent or just walk off the job, that the city would have some financial recourse for that. Obviously, that's not going to happen. However, the city's contracting requires that we have this, so it's not an option for us to not have it if we want to work for the city there. The letter of credit funds, when we issued the letter of credit, those continue to generate investment income for BRA. So while we can't, whatever amount of letter of credit we have obligated, we can't physically use or spend that money, the funds continue to generate investment income for us. The board provided authorization last year for a $2.7 million letter of credit for the first year of operations, with provisions for subsequent CPI increases and future annual renewals of that letter of credit, and it's something that we have to renew each year of the contract. The letter of credit last year ended up being for $2.5 million, which included the annual budget for the base fee, those routine services. It also included disinfection chemicals and the sludge hauling. However, what it did not include last year was the capital improvements and the repair and replacement fund, which were about $750,000. So as we were going through the process over the last couple of months with the city to renew the letter of credit for 2020, they determined that it should have included those costs for capital improvements and repair and replacement, which are again $750,000 for the coming year. So the letter of credit amount for 2020 will be about $3.4 million, and we need authorization since it exceeds the $2.7 million that the board approved last year. So there is a slight increased cost. When we obtain a letter of credit, the bank charges a 0.75% fee on the total value, and so by adding these additional costs for capital improvements and repair and replacement, the fee for that is about an extra $5,600. It's not too terribly significant, but the city has agreed to reimburse us for the added fee that we're going to incur for having to add those other items to the total value. Also, I've got a resolution for you on this as well, and rather than putting a dollar value in the resolution this time so that we don't have to run the risk of coming back every year, we've got a limitation in the letter of credit that it just not exceed the annual budget under the contract going forward. So that's what I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
You don't want questions, this is my last one.
Go ahead, Peter. So are we setting aside our cash and getting the bank to issue a financial letter?
We have it invested in the CD.
Okay, is that cash considered part of our reserve?
Dave, come to the mic, please, so the recording can be, please.
To me, it seems kind of like a double overkill. Because we're a state agency and we have significant required reserves.
Right.
That are liquid in cash, and I get it that they want financial assurance, but we're not just another business. We're a political subdivision with significant financial reserves and revenue generating capacity.
It is a restricted cash. It is part coming out of our working capital. And then we take a CD, and it's earning about 200 basis points. Right. And then that is also then collateralized. So it's protected from that perspective too at the bank. So it's treated like all our other investments, except that it's carved out, because we have bond covenants too that have restricted cash. So this just falls into the category as restricted cash.
It's not part of our reserves.
And this is something new also, and I'd like Laura Lee to explain to you. We used to do an operations style bond that Well, I'll let her explain
An
it.
insurance instrument?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we would just do a bond, like they view us like we're a contractor, effectively. So they're looking for the same sort of comfort level they would get with a traditional contractor as they do with the BRA. And with that, we used to provide bonds. Because of issues with sovereign immunity, it got to a point where the bonding companies were no longer willing to grant bonds to entities like us, so we couldn't give a bond. And their solution, and I think a lot of it probably, and I can't speak for them, but relates to an equity, as they're considering us versus maybe a private entity that would provide the same sort of service. The private entity likely would provide a bond, whereas we cannot. So I think they're looking and saying, we can't get a bond from a private entity, but at the end of the day, if we go with this governmental entity, if we have a letter of credit, we have some sort of protection. So I think that's what we're dealing with.
My concern is that it needs to be carved out of our, what we're calling a cash reserve. So long as it's restricted and not a part of our required reserves, and that's good. But
And that's what it is.
it's kind of really extra reserve,
It's an extra reserve, right?
but it's not free reserve.
And it'll be carved out into our capital and our balance sheet as restricted cash.
We have another question.
Your fees for the letter of credit are also cheaper than the payment performance bonds would be, so it's net less
0.75.
cost to us.
It is.
And they're reimbursing you for it.
Any other?
They're reimbursing us for it, so hey,
They will.
it's netting out. Yeah. So, I don't see any big problem here. They want to pay for it, great.
Any other questions or comments? All right, Brad, if you'll read the resolution.
Whereas the Brazos River Authority has operated wastewater treatment plants for the city of Sugar Land for a period of 44 years with its current operations contract beginning on October 1, 2018. Whereas the contract includes a provision requiring the Brazos River Authority to provide a letter of credit in an amount equal to each year's annual budget in connection with the services, with such amount subject to an annual CPI adjustment in accordance with the terms of the contract. Whereas the Board of Directors authorized the General Manager/CEO and/or CFO to execute an irrevocable standby letter of credit in favor of the City of Sugar Land for the purpose of securing the Brazos River Authority's performance under the contract for the operation, maintenance, and management of the City of Sugar Land's wastewater treatment plants and reclaimed water facility on April 30, 2018. And whereas the standby letter of credit required by the Sugar Land contract for FY 2020 will exceed the total amount approved by the Board of Directors in the April 30, 2018 meeting. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager/CEO and/or CFO to annually execute an irrevocable standby letter of credit in favor of the City of Sugar Land for the purpose of securing the Brazos River Authority's performance under the contract for the operation, maintenance, and management of the City of Sugar Land's wastewater treatment plants and reclaimed water facility. And be it further resolved that the letter of credit will be in an amount not to exceed the annual budget and shall be renewed annually throughout the term of the contract, including any renewal periods, with the base fee component of the annual budget being subject to an annual CPI adjustment, which will be calculated in accordance with the terms of the contract.
You've heard the reading of the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt? Director Tallis, motion made by Director Tallis and second by?
Second.
Jared Smith. Please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Flores,
Yes.
Director Bell,
Yes.
Director Zaccanino,
Yes.
Director Bennis,
Yes.
Director Henderson,
Yes.
Director Huber,
Yes.
Director Crum,
Yes.
Director LaChance,
Yes.
Director Lattimore,
Yes.
Director Leslie,
Yes.
Director Lloyd,
Yes.
Director Luton,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Sanderson,
Yes.
Director Scott,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Tallis,
Yes.
Director Taylor,
Yes.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
At this time, the board will take a 5-minute break. Thank you. Discussion and possible action on Texas A&M Engineering Extension Service interlocal agreement by Robert Starnes, Security and Safety Program Manager. Welcome to the BRA.
Thank you. Good to be here. Before I begin the presentation, I'd just like to acknowledge Ron Petty is a division manager for TEACS. Ron, if you will raise your hand, he drove down from College Station this morning to join us, so thank you, Ron. Appreciate that. The Texas A&M Engineering Extension Services interlocal agreement. This is also known short for TEACS. As a new guy, I'm going to learn this clicker today. TEACS actually is a state agency that falls under the Texas A&M University system. TEACS is known not only throughout the state, throughout the country, but internationally. When I worked for the U.S. Department of State, there was actually training that TEACS provided some host governments. In fact, I understand they are the premier agency recognized throughout the world for their fire and safety programs, so quite robust programs. Texas Task Force 1 and Task Force 2 fall under TEACS. That is the state's primary rescue and recovery group within the state of Texas. They actually are assigned under the TEACS umbrella. In addition, there's some synergies at Texas A&M. The governor's office just recently moved the Office of Emergency Management under the Texas A&M umbrella. So there's some really good synergies now that that division as well as TEACS are all under the same Texas A&M University system. Some of the training areas that TEACS could assist the Brazos River Authority are as follows, and we'll get in a little bit more detail here. The infrastructure and safety. I highlighted here in red some of the direct benefits that BRA can achieve by an interlocal agreement with TEACS: critical infrastructure security, environmental health and safety, water and wastewater. Under the Fire and Emergency Service, the Emergency Management and Crisis Preparedness, that's something, again, that my office is responsible. Hazmat emergency response and rescue training. Under our law enforcement division, for our rangers, Lake Rangers, the emergency communications, forensics and investigations, and just basic law enforcement training. As you know, under law enforcement, in order to maintain a license under Texas Commission of Law Enforcement, it's a requirement to achieve certain training. Some of our rangers already takes TEACS training in order to maintain their licensing through the state of Texas. Homeland Security, emergency preparedness, and incident management and response. And cybersecurity, cyber readiness, assess vulnerability and security, exercise incident and response. And this last one is really something that TEACS is working on as we speak. It's called a cyber lab. They're in the process of putting together the capability to bring agencies, political subdivisions in, and actually practice cybersecurity real time, so that you're actually working on a dummy system and being attacked by cyber experts who are posing as nefarious individuals attempting to hack into the system. So they're getting the real life feel of being attacked, but under a controlled classroom environment. Really looking forward to that. Why TEACS? The advantage of using TEACS is because they are a state agency, it would allow for rapid implementation. An interlocal agreement, we would be able to enter into direct services and training with TEACS because they are a state agency, consistency of operations, and professional reliability from proven performance providers. The LCRA and the North Texas Water District currently have interlocal agreements. And we met with, my staff and I met with the LCRA in Austin last week, and they say they have gotten tremendous values from their interlocal agreement with TEACS. And lastly, Alliance recommendation. In 2004, the governor issued an executive order. And in this executive order, so all state agencies must develop written risk management and safety programs. Now, we are not a state agency that we must or have to comply with this. However, the goal was for individual agencies to minimize the risk of job accidents, injuries, and deaths. establish performance and accountability standards, and provide safety and health training and education. If this interlocal agreement is approved, the program right out of the box that we would like to enter into negotiations, contract negotiations with TEEX, is to develop a health and safety program for all of BRA. This would be sort of at the 90,000 foot level, but also get into the individual facilities themselves. We are budgeted for this, and we are waiting for this resolution to pass to be able to enter into those contractual negotiations with TEEX. That's the presentation. Are there any questions?
I do want to clarify, we have, go back one slide, Robert. We do have health and safety plans currently, so what TEEX would be doing is coming in and helping us enhance those, just like they would be with our cybersecurity stuff. So it's an enhancement versus recreating the wheel and starting from ground zero. Fair?
Fair, thank you.
Yes.
Real quickly, working back, I guess, to slides.
So I noticed there were several things on the slides that were highlighted and so forth. Are there any other items on those slides that maybe aren't necessarily highlighted that we're planning on working with these folks on, or whatever?
I'm speaking for the office that I manage, but there are others. For instance, they provide leadership training, which our HR department, would be able to tap into that training if decided. Also, because they are already providing services and training technicians in water and wastewater management, there could also be some benefit to our technical service. So that's available as well. And
Director Sanderson, I think it opens the door and begins a relationship. So if we start to implement what we're going to do for the next budget year, and we're happy with the service that we get, and that relationship's going where we want, then we would certainly consider using TEEX for other items as well.
There's a couple of items in there that kind of jumped out. DR, for example, and that sort of thing that might be things that we won't want to consider. And maybe we are, just don't want to focus on it right now.
they have a very extensive menu, so.
And just because it's not highlighted on these slides doesn't mean we're not doing it in other areas.
Right.
It just means that our focus with TEEX right now
Just for this
is in some of
discussion.
these. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Director Henderson has a comment.
David, I think this question's really for you. Is TEEX an entity that we've worked with before? And if we have, how was that relationship? Was it a good working relationship, or?
All of the feedback that I've received from our safety training and the programs that they've brought to our staff have been very positive. I wouldn't, if we had negative feedback from TEEX in the past, I wouldn't have brought them to the board today. So I think it's a good relationship to further foster.
Awesome, thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Do we have some level of support or line items that we're requesting that came up with the $250,000? I mean, what does it buy us? I mean, we got some, just is it an hourly thing that you project you might need to use them, or you have that outlined?
That's a fair question. Right now, we are putting together scopes of work that we would submit to TEEX to give them a cost. The estimate so far coming back is roughly around $50,000 per facility, and we're looking at the 4 facilities to start off that have the most hazardous chemicals, that have some EPA requirements, but also internally, we want to make sure that we have the best health and safety program for these 4 facilities, with the goal to eventually expand that to all of our facilities over the next 2-3 years.
So it's, Director Zaccanino, is a good question. It's to begin to tie in safety, physical security, and cybersecurity at each of those facilities under one umbrella. So it's bigger than just saying, when we say health and safety plan, we mean this real broad spectrum of activities that we're going to be looking at. So it's how we negotiate what our priorities are in looking at those 4 entities from a physical, cyber, and health and safety perspective.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
But we have these plans in place, like the resolution says, we are enhancing. So it's not anything that we don't have. We have these things in place, we are enhancing.
The HASP is something that absolutely is in place. Yeah, we put it in place in 2004.
All right, any other questions or comments? Yes, sir. No, you're good. All right, if you'll read the resolution.
Sure, thank you. Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority hereby authorize the General Manager/CEO to enter into an interlocal agreement with the Texas A&M Engineering and Extension Service, TEES, to provide training and services to enhance Brazos River Authority's Health and Safety Program, HASP, and related issues, in an amount not to exceed $250,000.
You've heard the reading of the resolution. There's a motion made by Director Alan Samuelson and a second made by Jen Henderson. Please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Flores,
Yes.
Director Bell,
Yes.
Director Zacanino,
Yes.
Director Bennis,
Yes.
Director Henderson,
Yes.
Director Huber,
Yes.
Director Crone,
Yes.
Director LaChance,
Yes.
Director Lattimore,
Yes.
Director Leslie,
Yes.
Director Lloyd,
Yes.
Director Luton,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Sanderson,
Yes.
Director Scott,
Yes.
Director Smith,
Yes.
Director Tallis,
Yes.
Director Taylor,
Yes.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
The board will move to agenda item number 18, executive session. The Board of Directors will conduct a closed meeting in executive session on the following matters: to consult the attorney regarding litigation with respect to Allen's Creek Reservoir pursuant to the authority granted by Section 551.071 of the Texas Open Meetings Act, codified by Chapter 551, the Texas Government Code. If you are not specifically involved in the presentation of do it. Okay. The Board of Directors will reconvene. We'll begin now here at 12:40. And we are on agenda item number 11. Discussion and possible action on Department of Information Resources, interlocal agreement by David Thompson, Chief Financial Officer.
All right. DIR is the Department of Information Resources. It is a state agency. It's similar to our other co-ops that we have. We do purchase our high-tech products and services from them. DIR does work with other agencies, collaborate with other agencies, create services, and then they sell them to governmental entities like us. In order to participate in those programs, we need an interlocal agreement established so that we can purchase these shared services. So the resolution is just basically that, to have the interlocal agreement. So if there are any questions, I'll read the resolution.
All right, read the resolution.
Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of Brazos River Authority authorizes the General Manager, CEO, to execute an interlocal agreement with the Department of Information Resources for the Shared Services Program.
All right, you've heard the resolution, and there is a motion to adopt by Judy Crone and a second by, all right, Mr. Taylor. Please poll the board.
Presiding Officer Flores,
Yes.
Director Bell,
Yes.
Director Zacanino,
Yes.
Director Bennis,
Yes.
Director Henderson,
Yes.
Director Huber,
Yes.
Director Crone,
Yes.
Director LaChance,
Yes.
Director Lattimore,
Yes.
Director Leslie,
Yes.
Director Lloyd,
Yes.
Director Luton,
Yes.
Director Rankin,
Yes.
Director Sanderson,
Yes.
Director Scott, Yes.
Director Smith?
Yes.
Director Towles?
Yes.
Director Taylor?
Yes.
Director Wilson?
Yes.
Item number 12, discussion and possible action on surplus personal property by David Thompson, Chief Financial Officer.
As you know, state statute requires that we go through and any properties that is no longer useful to DRA, is too costly to repair, or simply we just are defective, we must bring it to the board for approval. So what I'd like to do is go ahead and let you look at the properties, and once you've approved the properties, we'll put them out on a well-advertised auction to sell. So here are the properties that are that we no longer need or defective. If there are no questions, I'd like to read the resolution.
All right, seeing there's no questions, if you can read the resolution, please.
Okay. Be resolved that the Board of Directors of Brazos River Authority hereby authorizes the General Manager, CEO, to dispose of the following surplus personal property under the terms and conditions that are in the best interest of Brazos River Authority. Be it further resolved that the Board authorizes the General Manager, CEO, in certain instances to continue to use and/or maintain previously authorized surplus properties in a manner that is the best interest of Brazos River Authority until the appropriate replacement property is received and placed in service. Oops. These are items that are no longer needed or repairs are not cost effective. Central office, we have one 2007 Chevy Impala, VIN number 2G1WB550-979-213386. A lot of office furniture and equipment, approximately 12 pieces. Environmental services, we have one lot of autoclave meters and incubators, approximately 19 pieces. A lot of digesters and microbiological equipment, approximately 7 pieces. A lot of glassware washers, approximately 2 pieces. A lot of glassware, approximately 150 pieces. A lot of lab fixtures, approximately 12 pieces. And a lot of measuring devices, approximately 11 pieces. We have one 2005 Ford F450 diesel flatbed, VIN number 1FDXW47P07PD26376. A one Miller Roughneck welder and generator, Possum Kingdom. We have a 2009 Ford Expedition 4x4. One FMFU 16559 EA97389. Another 2009 Ford Expedition 4x4, VIN number 1FMFU 1653639 EA97388. A lot of office furniture, approximately 9 pieces. A lot of tough booms, approximately 265 pieces. Floating docks, approximately 10 by 20. A lot of tools and equipment, approximately 4 pieces. Temple Belton, we have miscellaneous lab equipment, approximately 39 pieces. A portable building, approximately 73 by 81.
You have read, there's a question?
That is
There-
it.
Page 5.
Oh, page 5.
And those bids, is there a time when we do it all?
What now?
No, they're real close to the number.
Yes.
There's a 3 so we've done a great. $5,000, what's this, $3,000?
They're ordered, so they came right off the delivery lines, one after another. Most of these vehicles are specially ordered. Okay, no problem.
All right, you've heard the reading of the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt? Motion made by Scott and second by Dennis. Sorry.
Jim, second.
Who
But it's Peter's last name.
It was victory last.
It's their last one. Well, it's their last one, we'll give it to them. Please call the board.
Presiding Officer Flores?
Yes.
Director Bell?
Yes.
Castanino?
Yes.
Director Bennett?
Yes.
Director Henderson?
Yes.
Director Huber?
Yes.
Director Crown?
Yes.
Director LaChance?
Yes.
Director Lattimore?
Yes.
Director Leslie?
Yes.
Director Lloyd?
Yes.
Director Luton?
Yes.
Director Rankin?
Yes.
Director Sanderson?
Yes.
Director Scott?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Yes.
Director Tallis?
Yes.
Director Taylor?
Yes.
Director Wilson?
Yes.
Item 13, report and possible discussion on Property Management Committee meeting report by Director
All right.
Management Committee.
First of all, thank you, Presiding Officer Flores, for allowing me to chair this committee. This will be brief. I realize that half of y'all are still digesting lunch, and so this will only take about 45 minutes. We had a meeting to talk about, I always laughed at the word divestiture before because it's so hard to say, so I'm just saying get rid of property that we own, future reference. But obviously our goal is to do this within the confines of our overall plan here at the BRA. This committee got together and had all these directors in front of you in attendance, along with our rest of our executive committee, at a workshop on the 9th. Our plan here was to kind of look back in history at some of our past times where we have gotten rid of property and look at some of the properties we owned, and then going forward, decide what we're going to do, what kind of plan we're going to have in place. And so that's what I'll briefly review with you here today. So in front of you is just from top to bottom a listing of all of our properties, beginning at Possum Kingdom, Lake Granbury, Bee Mountain, our central office that you're in now, Lake Limestone, Williamson County Regional Raw Water Line, East Williamson County, and of course what we've been talking about, Allen's Creek down in my area. On the left-hand side, you're going to see a map of Granbury, and in red are the shaded areas that we're talking about. And on the right, you'll see the map of our land that we own at Lake Granbury with all the detail near the dam. Now, until you visited that area, that just is kind of a map with red lines around it. But it does give a scope to what we're going to be tasked with, which is what do we do with this land? And that'll be part of our whole process. Here's Bee Mountain. That's one area I've never been to, but you can see all the easement along the river in red again. That is land we owned, and the question is, going forward, do we retain that ownership? Oh, I was doing well. Here's Possum Kingdom. I think this, for all of us and those of you who have joined us in the last year, this kind of, if you look at the dates of the color code, you'll go back to, in red is land that was divested back in 2012, and then roads and easements in the same time are in, whether that's gray or black. And then in 15, in green, when we divested of Costello Island. And then of course in gray is the land retained by the BRA as we sit today, as well as the lake itself. And it just gives you, to me, a scope of how much there is and what we are tasked with doing. At this point going forward, our plan is to hire professionals that will decide how we go through this process. And of course, in layman's terms, it's, do we sell it, do we keep it, do we give it away, what do we do? And we're going to seek professional help in deciding how that process goes forward. And in official words, we're going to go out for requests for proposals, invite individuals or firms to submit qualifications to be awarded, and someone to go forward with this. And I think maybe you can comment on how we got to this, David, with legislative action and who pushed us to this point, I think is relevant.
Yeah, thanks, Director Tallis. Over the years, we've had a lot of folks inquire about BRA property, and we have a vision of protecting the water quality, maintaining our reservoirs, maintaining our water supply. From the staff's perspective, we're water people, and we need professional land people to come in and understand what our challenges are and help us prioritize the most effective way to use these properties moving forward. Some may be to divest, some may be to turn into environmental conservation easements. There's all different things that we can look at. But at the end of the day, while people continue to inquire about those BRA properties, we want to make sure that we have a plan going forward that protects our water, protects our reservoirs, and sets us forth into the future.
This could be a hot topic. These are the type of things that we as directors may get phone calls from people in our area. We always say we refer them back here to the office for comment because we don't want to, we want to stay in our lane, you might say, on areas like this. That's it on my presentation. Any questions? Peter, outgoing directors, anything?
I have a question for you.
Yes.
So when we're going to ask for a master plan to be developed, is that a 5-year, 10-year? What's the lifespan that we're looking for?
I think it's to be determined. That's what we're going to ask them to develop. I would think that history would teach us it would be a shorter term because if we're really going to divest of it, that takes a certain course of time. David?
My focus would be not to necessarily think about divesting, but if again, how do we optimally use the properties that we have to benefit BRA going forward? If we come up with a plan, or if we don't come up with a plan, and we divest a property and we figure out that we have a water snake issue or some other type of issue in 8 or 10 years, then we've gotten rid of an asset that we needed. So we want to look at the long term. What's the best way to use the property and maximize our portfolio? So I can't answer your question, but it will certainly be beyond 5 years, for sure.
Any other questions? Yes, Peter.
I do want to say that as the PK map showed, there's a lot of property there. It was a very good meeting, very informative, learned a lot, and so I really am glad that committee is going to continue because I ran into somebody that actually knows a significant amount about our property.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you more about it if you want to know. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Anything else? All right. That's it. The end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 14, report and possible discussion on reservoir operation report by Michael McClendon, Upper Basin Regional Manager.
Thank you, Presiding Officer Flores. This report is in response to some of the actions, or I guess some of the comments concerning a fish kill below Lake Granbury that was presented before the board at the last board meeting. And so I wanted to provide an update on what we've looked at since then. Staff went in and we evaluated potential mitigation strategies to determine what actions might be feasible and also economically viable to take to limit future events such as this occurring below the dam. We wrote a report. A copy of that report was provided to you, and I'm going to go over that briefly. After assessing various strategies or possible actions that could be taken, we then looked at those strategies and we categorized them as either administrative, operational, or mechanical. And then we further evaluated those various strategies and looked at some of the constraints associated with inputting those into place. And so to summarize our findings, what we found was restoration of the low flow back to full operational capacity is our number one priority. Once we get that back up and operating, it's going to really increase our release flexibility. We have an engineering design firm looking at that right now, and we're optimistic that by the end of this fiscal year, we'll have construction going on the low flow. The other thing that we determined was that we need additional information. So staff is going to undertake a dissolved oxygen study looking at the Stilling Basin and also the pool below the dam. And so what we're trying to do here is identify which strategies that we might be able to implement that would maintain or either increase the DO concentrations. Essentially, we need to understand what those DO concentrations are before you go in and maybe install some kind of mechanical device or something like that, which, could be washed downstream or just not, the data's not any good. So one of the things that we're first doing with regard to the DO study is we're going to go out and purchase some DO data loggers, dissolved oxygen data loggers. That's going to cost about $15,000. We'll install that, and then we'll maintain them, and then read that DO over a course of time. And then we'll also have staff time that's associated with that. In the interim, what we're doing, our current low flow is somewhat operational. It's not fully operational, but whenever we go in, we'll try to make slow, graduated, really incrementally reduced releases. So whenever we have a flood event, instead of shutting the gates all at once, we're going to kind of try to slow that down, and hopefully that will mitigate the issue where the fish will go and seek other areas with greater oxygen quantities downstream. The last thing I wanted to reference was it was suggested that we look at relocating the fish. Whenever we looked at this more comprehensively, it's an extremely manpower-intensive process. You've got to go in, you've got to shock the fish, you've got to net them, you've got to transport them, and then you've got to relocate them. And then there's also safety issues associated with not just that component, but also being down below the dam. And there's also an issue of obtaining a Texas Parks and Wildlife permit. The permit's probably the easiest obstacle to overcome. But whenever we looked at the fish, the volume of fish, the frequency at which we make gate releases, the labor involved, and then the safety issues associated, we just found that relocating fish was not an endeavor that was one that we wanted to pursue. So to recap, we're going to bring the low flow to full operational capacity. We're going to initiate the dissolved oxygen study, and then in the interim, we're going to graduate the releases from the dam. And I can take any questions if you have any.
So, Michael, I appreciate your team being responsive. As y'all know, the last board meeting, we had a resident very concerned about the fish kill that happened. And so the team has been working very hard to be responsive, and he's just outlined a plan to show how the BRA is going to help to prevent that in the future. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to agenda item 15, report and possible discussion on fiscal year 2019 fourth quarter budget report by David Thompson, Chief Financial Officer.
Okay, this is our fiscal year end, August 31st, fourth quarter numbers of our budget. And graphically, I show the three key elements of our financial statements. First is basically the revenue, where we're favorable 7.9 million over budget, and that's primarily due to interruptible water. We also had favorable interest rates on our investments that was higher than what we budgeted. Expenses were 5.7 million on operating expenses, and that's due primarily to lower spends on the Corps of Engineers 8 core lakes that we have in our basin, and also lower spending across most of the departments. We also had operating expenses or programs or projects that were 1.5 million under budget, and those were basically timing differences on these studies and assessments. We did capture that in our 2020 budget. Last is our projects. We're 21 million under budget, and most of that is Allen's Creek. Here's the detailed financials that I just spoke about. I spoke about the variances. And this is how we've spent the money in the fourth quarter into the year. Are there any questions? Okay.
Thank you. Okay, again, this is our first quarter year-ending investment report. This is required by Public Funds Investment Act that I present this report each quarter. First is just a two-year look at portfolios. We ended up the investments at 121 million.
This is the blocks of investments that we have. And in the CDs that we have out there, we're averaging anywhere from 250 basis points to 290 basis points. As you probably know, the feds have been dropping the rates significantly, and now we're seeing investments down well below 200 basis points. So we've done well in keeping the laddering and keeping our investments at high. With that, we're running around 270 basis points, which is outbeating Texas Pool and the Treasury bills that we have out there. Any questions?
Any questions?
Okay.
Comments?
That was it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, moving on to agenda item 17.
Right here. No, this will work right here. See?
Discussion and possible action on the election of board officers by Riley Wood, Senior Staff Attorney.
Okay, this is under Article 4 of the bylaws, requires that in October of every odd year, we re-elect a assistant presiding officer and secretary. And so that's what we're going to be doing right here. And there's really not a lot of rules associated with it other than you cannot serve more than 2 consecutive terms. You can serve limitless number of non-consecutive terms. And if you are going to serve a consecutive term, one of those 2, it's got to be by a 2/3 vote. Otherwise, it's a majority vote. And so I guess at that, I'll turn it over to Director Flores.
All right.
I think we begin with the assistant presiding officer. Do we need to make a motion?
All right, so again, the bylaws provided that the election of officers shall occur at this meeting. So this next item agenda is to make an election for assistant presiding officer and for secretary as well. So in that regard, I would like to begin accepting nominations for the position of assistant presiding officer.
Jeff Tallis.
All right,
Second that.
okay. So,
Are you gonna do one at a time, or both?
so here's what we'll do. As I understand, we're gonna go around the room and make so at this point, we have a nomination on the board for assistant, on the floor for assistant presiding officer for Director Tallis. Do you accept the nomination? All right. Anybody else? All right, pull the board, please.
Do I read the resolution first?
We only do this once every 2 years.
Yeah, here we go. I was in the wrong, okay. Be it resolved by the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority pursuant to the authority granted by Article 4 of the Brazos River Authority bylaws, that Director Tallis is hereby elected to serve as Assistant Presiding Officer. The aforementioned officer shall serve for 2 years or until successor is selected.
There is a resolution on the floor. Is there a motion to adopt? Crone, Peter Bennis.
There you go.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those against, say nay.
It's tempting.
Will that work? All right. Will that work? Okay. So, moving on to the nominations for secretary.
Madam Chairman, I have a nomination for secretary.
Yes.
Director Ford.
We have nomination on the floor for Director Ford. Any other nominations? All right, you want to read your,
Be it resolved by the Board of Directors of the Brazos River Authority pursuant to the authority granted by Article 4 of the Brazos River Authority bylaws, that Director Ford is hereby elected, Director Taylor is hereby elected to serve as secretary. The aforementioned officer shall serve for 2 years or until a successor is selected.
all right, we have heard that resolution. We have a motion on the floor for Director Ford to be our next secretary. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That works. Okay, congratulations to both of you. Yeah, hold on, I'm trying to get there.
That's it.
All right, number 19. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at this time. So moved. Motion made by Jen Henderson, second by Rick Huber. Thank you so much, and again, thank you to our outgoing and our officers. Appreciate you guys.